Keanu Reeves once said that he knows the people who love us will miss us when we are gone, and that simple thought explains a lot about how he lives his life. For many years, Hollywood has tried to define him in neat boxes, but his real story has always been much deeper. In the late 2000s, studios quietly labeled him box office poison, suggesting his time had passed. Then John Wick arrived and went on to make more than $1 billion worldwide, and just like that, the whispers disappeared. Yet success has always come with a cost for Keanu, a cost he has been paying for decades. He trains for months before every film, performs nearly all his own stunts even after turning 50, and keeps working through injuries that would force most actors to quit. Now, once again, quiet questions are circulating. People inside the industry are wondering what is really happening behind the scenes and why those close to him seem concerned. To understand that, you have to understand where he came from and what shaped him. Keanu Reeves was born on September 2, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon, at a time when the city was already filled with unrest. Protests were common, violence felt close, and the air carried constant tension. Even though Beirut was still known as the Paris of the Middle East, the cracks were impossible to ignore. His mother, Patricia Taylor, was an English costume designer who followed work wherever it led her. His father, Samuel Nolan Reeves Jr., was a geologist with Hawaiian and Chinese roots who also moved often. Their meeting was the kind of thing that could only happen in a city where cultures from all over the world mixed together. Keanu was born at the American University of Beirut Hospital, one of the few places that continued operating even when the city felt unsafe. His name meant cool breeze over the mountains, a peaceful meaning in a place that rarely felt calm. As he grew older, his sense of identity became complicated. His father's background included Hawaiian, Chinese, English, and Portuguese ancestry, while his mother came from Essex with no Asian roots at all. This mix made Keanu feel like he lived between worlds without fully belonging to any of them. Many people saw him as white passing, which helped him avoid certain barriers, but internally he still felt out of place. He spoke later about feeling like he floated through life rather than fitting in anywhere. That feeling of being undefined may be one reason his characters later felt so universal. In The Matrix, Neo's ethnicity was never mentioned, which was unusual at the time and allowed audiences everywhere to see themselves in him. His childhood changed quickly when his parents separated in 1966. Keanu was only 2 years old when his father began drifting away, struggling with alcohol and later becoming involved in drug dealing. Eventually, his father ended up in prison, and Keanu barely knew him at all. The last time he saw his father was when he was 13, during a short visit to Kauai. They sat together under the night sky and hardly spoke. The silence between them said everything. The next morning, his father dropped him at the airport and disappeared from his life completely. Keanu carried that moment with him forever. He later described his relationship with his father as heavy, filled with pain, and shaped by silence, something that affected how he trusted people and how he worked. After the divorce, stability never really returned. His mother moved Keanu and his sister from place to place, chasing new beginnings. They lived in Sydney, where his sister Kim was born, then briefly in New York City, and finally settled in Toronto in 1971 when Keanu was 7. Even then, life did not slow down. His mother remarried several times, and stepfathers came and went. Keanu attended school after school, never staying long enough to feel rooted. He passed through De La Salle College, Avondale Secondary Alternative School, the Etobicoke School of the Arts, and Jarvis Collegiate Institute. Making lasting friendships felt impossible. Constant movement taught him how to adapt quickly, but it also taught him to protect himself emotionally. His mother worked hard as a showgirl and costume designer, often late into the night, sometimes far away. Money was unstable, and Keanu did not see her as much as he wanted. Still, he always spoke of her with deep affection. She taught him independence, good manners, and creativity. Through watching her work with fabrics, costumes, and performers, he learned about storytelling without even realizing it. Years later, at San Diego Comic-Con in 2024, Keanu dedicated his BRZRKR comic series to her, thanking her for teaching him about life, storytelling, and love. School, however, was especially difficult. Keanu struggled with severe dyslexia, but at the time, teachers did not understand it. Instead of receiving help, he was labeled as lazy or disruptive. Reading and writing felt overwhelming, like climbing a cliff without any support. To survive, he pretended to understand lessons so no one would see how lost he felt. That pretending became a habit, one that hurt him deeply but also sharpened his ability to observe people. He learned to read emotions, body language, and tone instead of words, skills that later became essential to his acting. His frustration eventually got him expelled from the Etobicoke School of the Arts. He admitted he was too energetic and talked back too much, but the truth was that the system was not built for someone like him. Over 5 years, he attended 4 different high schools, none of which offered the support he needed. He excelled in hockey at De La Salle College and was even named Most Valuable Player, but his academic struggles continued. By 17, he dropped out entirely. He later said that as a child, he did a lot of pretending, and school never gave him anything solid to hold on to. Acting became his escape. It was a place where observing, pretending, and feeling finally made sense. It was not about fame for him, it was about survival. His dyslexia forced him to rely on physical presence, movement, and emotion instead of memorizing lines perfectly, which gave his performances a grounded honesty. Audiences might not have noticed it consciously, but they felt it. His early career began in Canadian television. In 1984, he appeared in 1 episode of Hanging In, and before that, he worked as a correspondent on the youth show Going Great. He filmed commercials, including one for Coca-Cola, and performed in small theater productions. In 1985, he played Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet in North York. None of these jobs paid much, but they built his experience and confidence. He worked constantly, learning the craft long before Hollywood paid attention. In 1988, he took on a more serious role in Permanent Record, playing a teenager dealing with his best friend's suicide. The film was heavy, and Keanu approached it with quiet depth. While it was not a major hit, critics noticed his sincerity, especially since suicide was rarely addressed openly in films at the time. Then everything changed in 1989 when Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was released. Made on a small budget, it became an unexpected hit, earning over $40 million worldwide. Audiences loved its warmth and humor, and Keanu suddenly became a recognizable face. That success came with a downside. Hollywood saw him only as Ted Logan, the lovable but clueless character. Casting directors ignored his dramatic abilities, and he spent years trying to break free from that image. He deliberately chose challenging roles to prove himself. In 1991, he starred in My Own Private Idaho, playing a complex and vulnerable character. To convince River Phoenix to join the project, Keanu rode his motorcycle thousands of miles just to deliver the script personally. The film was critically acclaimed and deepened their friendship, showing the industry that Keanu had real depth. That same year, Point Break pushed him further into action stardom. He trained extensively, performed his own stunts, and committed fully to the role. Audiences and critics responded to his discipline and chemistry with Patrick Swayze. Then Speed arrived in 1994 and turned him into a global star. The film was a massive success, and his performance alongside Sandra Bullock made him one of Hollywood's top action actors. He earned millions per film, but he never chased money for its own sake. He even turned down $12 million to make Speed 2 because he did not believe in the script, choosing instead to tour with his band. While his career was rising, personal tragedy struck. In 1993, River Phoenix died after collapsing outside the Viper Room. Keanu witnessed the aftermath, and the loss haunted him. He did not speak publicly about it for over 25 years, choosing silence as his way of honoring their bond. Around the same time, his sister Kim was diagnosed with leukemia. For 10 years, Keanu supported her through treatment, often putting his career on hold. He became her caregiver, stayed by her side, and quietly donated millions to cancer research. In 1999, The Matrix changed everything again. Keanu prepared deeply for the role, studying philosophy and psychology to understand Neo. The film became a cultural phenomenon, and his decision to take a share of the profits earned him tens of millions. Quietly, he donated most of that money to leukemia research, never seeking recognition. Through all the fame, loss, and pressure, Keanu Reeves remained the same at his core, driven not by ego, but by empathy, discipline, and a deep understanding of pain and love. He even sold his house just to be closer to his sister, spending nearly $5 million on her medical care. On top of that, he quietly set up a private foundation to support cancer research in children's hospitals. He never put his name on it and never spoke about it publicly. He did not want praise or attention. For him, helping was not something to be advertised, it was simply something that had to be done. When the Matrix sequels were released in 2003, his earnings reached levels that shocked even Hollywood. Reports claimed he made more than $100 million, with some estimates going as high as $156 million. At the time, that made him one of the highest-paid actors in history, especially when people calculated that he was earning roughly $1 million for every line of dialogue he spoke. Even with that kind of money, he did not keep it all for himself. He gave large portions to the costume department and the visual effects team because he believed their work was just as important to the film's success. Stories spread about how he gave up around $75 million of his earnings and even bought Harley-Davidson motorcycles for the 12 stunt performers who worked closely with him. Long before his later career highs, generosity had already become part of who he was. Then, on December 24, 1999, his life changed in a way no success could soften. Jennifer Syne went into labor 8 months into her pregnancy. They had been waiting for their daughter, imagining her first cry and the future they would share as a family. Instead of joy, the delivery room fell silent. Their baby girl, Ava Archer Syme Reeves, was stillborn just one day before Christmas, only weeks before her due date. This tragedy came only months after The Matrix had exploded into theaters earlier that year. What should have been a time of celebration became a deep and lasting wound. Keanu later said it was one of the most painful experiences of his life, and that date stayed with him like a shadow that never fully lifted. In the months that followed, both he and Jennifer tried to move forward, but grief changes the way people breathe, think, and love. Their relationship, once warm and steady, began to crack under the weight of losing a child. There was no anger or blame between them. They simply did not know how to heal while staying together. Within weeks, they separated because the pain was too heavy to carry as a couple. Jennifer's mother later shared that her daughter never truly recovered and struggled with depression after Ava's death. Even so, Keanu and Jennifer remained connected. They were no longer together romantically, but the emotional bond did not disappear. By 2001, they had found their way back to each other as friends, and that closeness made what came next even more devastating. On April 2, 2001, Jennifer left a party hosted by Marilyn Manson in the early morning hours, around 6:20 a.m. She was driving her Jeep Grand Cherokee along a street in Los Angeles when something went terribly wrong. The vehicle crashed into parked cars with such force that she was partially ejected and died instantly. She was not wearing a seatbelt. Later toxicology reports revealed cocaine in her system. She was only 28 years old. When Keanu called the coroner's office to identify her, they told him she had already been identified. It became the second unbearable loss in less than 2 years. First his daughter, then the woman he still deeply cared for. The grief crushed him quietly, away from cameras and headlines. In rare moments, Keanu has spoken about Ava, saying her death was the most difficult experience of his life and that he grieves her every single day. Time moved on, but the pain never left. Losing her permanently changed how he saw love, loss, and survival. After Jennifer's death, he pulled back from the Hollywood spotlight. He stopped chasing massive studio projects and turned toward smaller, quieter films. He served as a pallbearer at her funeral, and afterward, he chose work that did not demand constant public attention. During that period, his film choices reflected his inner state. He appeared in The Watcher, which earned $47 million worldwide, and Sweet November, which made $45 million but was poorly received by critics. He was not looking for hits. He was looking for a way to exist without being overwhelmed. He worked on films like Hardball in 2001 and The Gift, staying away from the intense pressure that major studios expected from him. He needed space, and he allowed himself to take it. Despite everything he had been through, one thing about him never changed. He believed deeply in the people he admired. Time and again, he took major pay cuts so other actors could join his projects. For The Devil's Advocate in 1997, he gave up millions so Al Pacino could be cast. For The Replacements in 2000, he delayed his salary so Gene Hackman could sign on. To him, the quality of the work mattered far more than the size of his paycheck. That kind of humility is rare in Hollywood, but for Keanu, it came naturally. In 2005, he starred in Constantine, a film with a budget of $100 million that went on to earn $230 million worldwide. Even so, Warner Brothers labeled it a disappointment because it did not meet their highest expectations. It opened with just under $30 million in the United States, and audiences did not return in large numbers during its theatrical run. Over time, however, something interesting happened. People began rewatching it. They started appreciating its dark tone and Keanu's restrained performance. Slowly, it developed a cult following, becoming one of those films that outlived its box office numbers. For a while after that, major studios hesitated to put him at the center of their biggest projects. Films like The Day the Earth Stood Still in 2008 earned $146 million on an $80 million budget, while Street Kings made far less. Hollywood once again began whispering that he was box office poison. Leading roles dried up. Instead of fighting the label, Keanu turned toward what brought him peace. In 2011, he co-founded Arch Motorcycle Company with Gard Hollinger. Together, they created custom motorcycles built by hand, producing only a small number each year. Every bike reflected care, patience, and precision. He also returned to music, touring with his band Dogstar, playing bass and enjoying the simplicity of performing without pressure. Then, in 2014, John Wick arrived. It was never intended to become a massive franchise. The first film had a modest budget of about $20 million. Keanu once again took a pay cut, accepting roughly $1 to $2 million because he believed in the story. He also negotiated a small ownership stake, trusting his instincts over studio expectations. When the movie was released, it earned $86 million worldwide and immediately stood out for its style and energy. Audiences embraced it, and suddenly Keanu Reeves was back in a way no one had predicted. By 2023, the John Wick franchise had earned over $1.1 billion worldwide. Chapter 4 alone brought in $447 million. In 2019, Chapter 3 even outperformed Avengers Endgame at the domestic box office during its opening weekend. His salary grew with the franchise, but not in the way people expected. For the second and third films, he earned around $2 to $2.5 million each. The real financial reward came from his ownership stake, which increased with every successful release. For Chapter 4, he earned about $25 million, including a large bonus. When filming ended, he quietly gifted each stunt performer a personalized Rolex Submariner as a thank you. There was no press release, no announcement, just appreciation. His preparation for these films was extreme. Even in his 50s, he trained for 6 months in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo, and firearms techniques. His days were long and demanding, often training in the morning, hitting the gym later, and repeating the cycle. He learned to move seamlessly between combat styles to make the action feel real. For later films, he trained for months again and performed nearly 90% of his own stunts. Every fall, every punch, and every movement came from his commitment to authenticity. At the same time, something gentler entered his life. In 2019, he appeared on the red carpet with artist Alexandra Grant. They had been friends since 2011, working together on creative projects, including a book he wrote. Over time, that friendship deepened into a quiet and stable relationship. By 2023, he spoke openly about the sense of balance and connection it brought him. They were later seen together sharing simple moments, and people close to them described it as the healthiest relationship he had ever experienced. Behind all of this, he never stopped giving quietly. After his sister's long battle with leukemia, he donated most of his Matrix earnings to cancer research. He sold his home, spent millions on her treatment, and created a foundation that supported families without ever attaching his name. The foundation has operated for years, helping countless people without seeking recognition. In 2025, at 61 years old, he took on a new challenge by making his Broadway debut in Waiting for Godot alongside his longtime friend Alex Winter. The production succeeded quickly, recouping its investment in just 8 weeks and raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for charity. Critics praised his performance for its honesty, and audiences loved seeing him share the stage with an old friend. Even at this stage of life, he trained almost every day, pushing his body despite injuries from decades of physical roles. He avoided stunt doubles whenever possible, believing audiences deserved real effort. His discipline, humility, and resilience became as much a part of his legacy as any role he ever played.